show you what I did, and we'll go over that, and I'll get the next one done, and then we can move on to the back. So after looking at this, I'm going to try something a little bit different than what I've done before. I'm going to put the LED off to the side. See that? It's hard to see, but I got it kind of laying off to the side, aiming into the number board there. And what I'll do is then try to hot glue behind it, and then I'll try to hit that with a Sharpie as best I can. So the LEDs, typically, they're going to emit the light pretty much straight forward, right? So if I put the LED directly behind it, you'll have a bright spot in the center of the number board. You know, I'm going to try putting it off to the side so it's not directly at it, but hopefully, I guess what I'm thinking is if I can build it up with glue around it after I get the LED glued in there, rather, build it up the glue behind it, kind of acts as a shroud maybe with the Sharpie behind it. Maybe that'll help kind of diffuse the light a little bit better and light up the number board. So we'll give it a shot, see how it works. Okay, again, not pretty in there, but that's okay. Feel the shell starting to get a little bit heavier now too with the added glue to it, as is the case when using this stuff. Let me actually dig out my paint pen. It might work a little bit better. Trying not to get any on the windshield. Alright, so this here is just a paint pen that I picked up. I use it all over the layout, just to kind of darken things up. If I'm cutting a tie or something like that, I'll hit the end of it with this, and it helps it to not stand out as much. So I just get these at Michael, but it's a paint pen. Works out pretty nicely, but it is paint, so you got to be careful where you get it. I'm going to try not to get it on the windshield. And I guess there's other things you could do here too, like electrical tape. Probably could have even made a like a styrene plastic mounting bracket. That would have been easier just to glue that in to hold the LEDs. So, you know, you do what works for you. You get creative with it. Alright, again, not pretty, not perfect, but hopefully it helps. So now that we have the number boards done, I'm going to start dressing in the wiring. So we'll use this tape here to our advantage. Kind of start figuring out now how the harness is going to lay in the shell when everything gets put back together. So, you know, I got the motor and the shroud up in here. Smoke unit's going to be here. So with these wires, I think I'll run them around the funnel, and then we'll start tacking them in with some glue on the corner of the shell, and we'll start kind of forming this harness to come out right about here. That's roughly where the shell will sit once it's installed. Sorry for turning the shell out of the way. I'm trying to get the glue to roll, kind of go where I want it to go, so it doesn't drip in the wrong direction. So I'm just putting some beads of glue up in here just to hold those wires out of the way. There we go. Front's done. Got the headlight in, number boards. Let's move on to the back. Right, so once again, we're just going to pop this out. Just lift straight up. And pull that right out, and then one came right out. Let's get this diffuser off. Yeah, this heat shrink's a lot thinner than what I used. But I don't think we have the issue on the back lights as we did with the front. There's a lot of room in the back area. But we'll have to do the same type of thing with the number board lights. Right, in these recessed areas in here. Yeah, I'm just going to put a little bit of hot glue right now on the top and hold that in. First I'll check the back, make sure it's in. Yep, it's in. It's seated all the way down. Push it with the screwdriver, make sure. Alright, that looks good. I'll put a little bit more in later, but just to hold it in place for now, that'll be good. Alright, get the number board lights. So as I'm getting ready to put in the number board lights on the back side here, I realized I didn't put in the marker lights yet. Front one's not a big deal. We're going to drill them out. They'll go right here. Not sure where we're going to route those wires yet, but the back ones, I definitely want to drill that out first because they sit over top of the number board. So I don't want to put the number board LEDs in yet. So we're going to go ahead and drill these out, and then we'll get those marker lights installed. We're going to start with the front ones. The way that I do these now, there's a little bump in the shell, and what I'm going to do is take a razor blade carefully and try to get a flat spot on that, and then we're going to step drill it. I'll start with a 1/16 drill bit, very small, and then I'm going to move up to a 5/64, which is close to a 2mm. The LEDs are 2mm, so we're going to start with that, and if we have to, we'll widen the hole a little bit. You don't want to go too wide, but you don't want them too snug in there either, I found. If you do need to take it out to reposition it, these LEDs come apart really easily, so sometimes I have them where it's too tight, I'll have to re-drill the hole, so I have to pull it out. The LED comes apart. Or if it's too far out, you need to push it in. Probably don't want to be pushing on those LEDs too much. But anyway, let's get to it. We're going to cut a little flat on there with the razor blade very carefully. I don't want to scratch anything up. And then we're going to start step drilling it, starting with a small bit. And if you want, you could probably put a little bit of tape around that to get started with. So you don't nick anything, which is probably what I should do. And then you can't really see this very well. I just put a tiny little flat spot in it, just enough to take the paint off. And then we're going to use that to help guide us to get a decent bite on the drill bit to go through, so we don't walk the bit and it falls off and goes all over the place. So I'll do the other side too. So well, I've got the razor blade out, I might as well just do the back too, because we're going to do all 4 of these. Alright, so I'm going to start this by hand with the drill bit, and I'm trying to get this in a spot where you can see it. Just going to get started with this, start drilling by hand. Just enough to get it started. We got a nice little divot there now where we're not going to walk the bit, so that'll be good. It's a good start. Okay, so now we're going to go and hit it with the bigger drill bit, slightly bigger. Open them up a little bit more. Those are just the pilot holes. Alright, so I've got the 5/64 bit on there. And since we're back here, we'll just stick with this. Should have mentioned too, you want to make sure you don't pinch any wires in there if you've already installed your wires here, like I did. Like I probably shouldn't have, but I did. It's all good. Cleans up the holes. I mean, these holes aren't perfect. They're close enough and should get the job done. I've got another set of lights here. I try them from the outside because it should be the same. So we're going to open that up a little bit more. Just going to lower it there a little bit. I don't know if I want to really step up a drill size, because that actually goes in pretty nice. The thing is, with the heat shrink on them, and once we try jamming it in from the backside, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So I may go up a size just to help with getting these in there. I did take a measurement on this, and it's a little bit bigger. It's a little bit bigger than 2 millimeters, that is. And now these will be glued in too, so that'll help fill in the gap there. Trying some new things on this one. So I think that'll fit okay. It's hard to tell. This has the heat shrink on it. Let me get my other ones. Yeah, it'll fit in there okay. It is a little loose, but I think it'll be fine. Just see if I can get that in there and test this out before we do all of them. These are tough to get in. Alright, so kind of see what that looks like. That hole looks okay. I think that'll be fine. And it'll go in a little bit more too, but you get the idea there. So we'll draw them all out. It'll make the installation a little bit easier than trying to get in those corners and really wedge them in there with a tight tolerance. So just open them all up to that. Okay, so we're going to start with the front marker lights now. Get those installed. Now that we got the holes drilled out. These are a little easier to start with, so I figured a little easier to do rather. I figured we'd start with these. Okay, they're still not easy to get in there, but they're a little easier than the back ones. Alright, so I found they hang up on the heat shrink here, so I'm just gonna take these and try to flatten them very carefully so we don't break the LED, because these will break easily. Because it gets hung up right there on that piece of heat shrink. Yeah, I usually use a really small pair of needle nose pliers, which I can't find right now. A little difficult getting these in with my fingers, getting them in this tiny little area, but we will get them in. Okay, so because we got this heat shrink, that's that would sort of require a bigger hole for these. What I'm going to do is take a slightly bigger drill bit, next size up, and by hand, actually I might go 2 sizes up, and by hand on the back side, let's see if I can just kind of clear out some of that plastic. Just enough to fit that LED in there to help to get it in all the way, because you can't get it to seat all the way in the hole because that's hanging up. Just want to take enough plastic out to let that sit a little bit deeper in the hole there. Should be enough. I want to be careful not to go through with this. There we go, that's better. Perfect. So, it's hard to see, but we can get it to stick out a little bit more. I don't want it out all the way, but we can set that with the hot glue. Yeah, we can play around with it to get that to work now. So, we do the other one by hand. If I could even fit a drill in here, which I can't fit a drill in here, but even if I could, this bit would probably walk right through, and this one's too big, so just need to take a little bit off by hand here. Alright, right, so I think I am going to have to glue these in off camera because I'm going to definitely need to work this with 2 hands carefully. I want to make sure that they're set in properly. So I'll get them going and then we'll check back in. Okay, so I just got them in there, hot glued them, and there we go. That's what they look like. This holes did mess that up a little bit on the bottom there. I think overall it still looks okay. I'll take it. Looks all right. So we got them in. And again, this shell's getting heavy now. All that glue. And let's get those back ones in now. These are always fun to put in, and there's a whole lot of sarcasm in that. I'm trying to get around these posts and get my fingers in there. The holes are all the way. I don't even know if I can show you this on the camera. They're all the way down in these corners. So I gotta get all the way down there, get my finger down there, and then glue it at the same time. So again, I'm gonna do this with the camera off because I have to tilt this all different ways to get the glue to run, and you're really not going to see much here, unfortunately. Just with the workspace here and the cameras, and then my lack of extra hands right now. So, all right, let's get to that. Okay, guys, so I really want to show you this here because I don't want to shortchange you on this. What I wound up doing was, and you can't really see, but I took the same drill bit that I used up front and just kind of wiggled that back and forth with my hand and used a pair of pliers too to help just ream out, kind of recess that hole a little bit just so that lip on the heat shrink doesn't catch. So then what I'm going to do now is take these flat nose pliers here and just going to feed it into that hole. Now I did try it already, it does fit. I was able to get it to the protrusion on the outside of the shell where I wanted it. I'm just going to feed it into the hole there. All right, so that's in now. Now I'm going to check it on the outside. It's down here, so I want that. There we go, we're all the way out now. Okay, so you see we're all the way out. You can see the white on the LED. I'm going to push that in a little bit. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to put some glue back in there to hold that in, and then before we hit it with the cold air to set it in place and lock it in, we're going to push it in a little bit. You want to do this kind of quick, kind of swift, and try to get it right the first time, because I have had to take these out before after putting glue in, and I just drop it down like that. This is where I'm twisting the shell around a lot, kind of get that to fall off. Kind of let that get around there. And now we're going to gently push this in to where I want it and hope I don't push it too far. There we go. I think I like that right there. Sticking out a little bit, but not too far. And we're going to lock that in. All that work for that little light. I think we can all agree that that's going to look really cool, right? It's worth the effort. One left. This one, I'm actually going to turn the camera off because I did the easy one out of that harness that had a longer LED wire on it. This one's shorter, and I'm not going to have much room to work in here. So we'll get this one in, and then we'll get back. But we're going to hook up the harness, take it back over the track, check all the lights, make sure everything looks good. Trying to think what else. And we're almost ready to button it up. All right, let's get that last one in. All right, so there we go. Those are in. Trying to get the camera angle here. There you go. You can see that now. In the middle, that's the tail light. The ones on the ends are the marker lights. Now, I forgot, but I still have to get the number boards in. So I'm going to put them in now too, real quick. And let me just show you the back real quick. The lights. Yeah, they look awesome. It's going to be killer. You got the green markers up front. They look really good. Once again, I'm going to shut the camera off for this. Okay, so I got the number board in the back. We're going to get these wires cleaned up too. So I'll get this bundled in nicely. Then we're going to take it and hook it back up to the chassis. Make sure everything works before we start getting ready to close this up. That's where we're at. Also, I'm going to put a little bit of paint on there from the paint pen once this reaches room temperature again. It's still frosted over, so heat up a little bit, dry off, set, and paint it up like we did the front one, and then we'll check things out and see how it looks with power on. Okay guys, so in the interest of keeping this build going, in addition to really, I couldn't get a good camera angle in the shell to show you the wiring. I did do that off camera, but it wasn't anything different than what I've shown you guys before. Really, it's just hard to get the camera in here and tack all this, all the wiring in and everything at the same time. But I want to show you what I did here. You know, really all that I did was just straighten out the wires best I could, dressed it in, being careful of pinch points, you know, like where the mounting posts are and just things like that. You got to be mindful of how this is going to sit on the chassis, you know, once it's installed, and try to keep those wires out of those areas, like around the smoke unit, funnel, again, dress them in around it, and then try to centrally locate as best I can the wiring where it's going to come out with respect to where the board is and everything else. So in here's where the bundle will sit once everything's buttoned up, because there will be a little bit of a bundle of wiring here. So that'll all get dressed in up in here, and I also want to keep enough length here for service loop, so you know you can take the shell off if you have to work on it, service the motors. I don't know if you have to get in here for some odd reason, replace a smoke unit, change the wick. You can lay that off to the side like that and still have enough room in here to work. And you can always disconnect these connectors too, so there's enough room in here to get my fingers in, disconnect, and have to work on it if I have to. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to thin out all this unused wiring. As mentioned before, we have these LEDs or these options that we're not going to use with this particular model, so I'm going to remove those out of the harness. We're going to take the harness out of the board, and we're going to carefully remove the wires out of that connector, so that way we just eliminate them. Some of these returns are tied together, the purple wires, so we'll have to heat shrink those off and dress them in nicely so that they don't short to anything as well. And overall, I'm just going to try to shorten this up. This looks like right here, these are my shortest wires, and these are for the marker lights, so I think I'm going to keep this length here, maintain this length, and clean up all these other wires to be about the same length here. I've already cleaned up a couple of the, for example, the marker wires in the shell. They were longer than the other wires, the other LEDs, so I just shortened those up a little bit to try to keep all of these connectors at roughly the same length. It's hard to see, but we'll get this all cleaned up and dress it in a little bit nicer. Just something else too, I did put this on the track just to make sure before I go any further that all the LEDs work, everything still functions as expected. One thing I did notice, which is unfortunate, these number boards here, they are blacked out on the back side, so all the work we did to get those LEDs in, these aren't lighting up, unfortunately. Not sure what else I can do with that. If I could probably pull all that apart again and scrape the paint off the back side of the number board. That may be a project for another day. I don't think I'm going to do that right now. So anyway, we got the lights in there, they work, so let's keep going with this. One other thing I forgot to mention too, when I had it on the track, I did try it forward and reverse, and it was a lot smoother now that the motors are greased up. And also the smoke unit, you can't even hear it now, so that worked out well. That's perfect now. So let's get into this wiring and start cleaning this up next. So we've got all the unused wires out of the harness now. As you can see, I used a razor blade. I do not recommend doing this. You don't have to pull these out of the harness. You can easily just dress them into the harness, or cut them off if you want. Leave a little bit of a pigtail in there with some heat shrink if you want to. But this is my preferred method. I just like to clean this up best as possible. But if this is dangerous, so I do not recommend doing that. Just showing you how I do it. Doesn't mean you guys have to do it the same way. So do what works best for you and what's safest. So now we have these little stubs here for these ground wires, these return wires that aren't used. Just going to put a little bit of heat shrink on them, cap them off, and then we'll get into sizing the lengths of these wires here. We're going to cut all these back and shorten them up. So let's get to it. Okay guys, we got all the wiring shortened up. Happy with the way it turned out. So again, you don't have to do that. It's my preference. I like to, because then I can coil up the wires underneath in this area, and it just makes it easier to get the shell on and off if you have to. One thing I did out here was I put this big wad of heat shrink on this. So this was the beacon connector. Now it works. Don't think Western Pacific ever used a beacon. I don't know. Maybe you guys can leave that in the comments if you know better. But I don't know. It's nice to have in case one day down the road decide I want to do something with it. It's there, it works, it's labeled underneath beacon, so all I have to do is just pop off the heat shrink and we're good to go with that. So everything else is shortened up. Just gonna dress this in a little bit better. The thing I did forget to do was put the thermal compound on the heat sink and the bridge rectifier, so we're gonna do that next. All right, so this is thermal grease that I use. I guess any thermal grease you can find will work. We're gonna get this installed on there. One thing you wanna have is a lot of paper towels on hand, because if you guys have ever worked as, once it gets one spot, it just goes everywhere. And it's gonna make a little bit of a mess back here, but I'm gonna let the camera roll and just show you how I get into there, because I'm gonna have to do some finagling with getting this out, moving things around to really get in there. So this is it. We're gonna spread a little bit on the bridge rectifier on both sides of it, and then get that. Well, first we have to take the heatsink off, and then we're going to put that on. Then we'll get the heatsink back on, and we'll get it back in the locomotive here. So I'll just go over a few things that I did. Just, cleaned up the wiring as best I could, dressed it all, zip tied it. We got a nice little harness bundle here that should sit up there like that when we put the shell back on. Let's see, what else did we do? I put the piece of Kapton tape over the capacitors here. And again, that's just in case any kind of fluid were to drip out up here. It'll hit the Kapton tape, roll down, and maybe damage the speaker. Overall, I'm not too concerned with that as long as the board's protected. So, and again, I try not to overfill my smoke unit, so I'm gonna hope that's not a problem. But overall, it looks good. And we can take this off now. We'll get ready to put the shell back on, see how that fits with all the wiring. We're gonna have to tuck all the wiring up in place once we get the shell on. Let's get to that. Oh, real quick, I did put the thermal grease on too, so you guys saw that. All right, let's try to get the shell on now. So first we're going to hook everything back up. I'll lay this over. Yeah, let's try to stuff all that in there. I'm going to give this one last blowout here. Actually, there is one last thing I want to do. I like to write the file name in the shell, like the file of what I used to run the locomotive. So let me go get the part number of the locomotive that I used, and that's what I'll just put in there. It's 20- something or another. So let me get the part number for that, and then we'll write that in, and we'll get the shell on. All right, now this can be a little bit challenging trying to get this in. What I like to do is flip the shell over on the back side like this. Actually, you know what? One last blowout. Like I said, I go through a lot of air. Just, you go through all this trouble to do this and all this work. Last thing you want is a tiny little shard of wire, strand, or something, solder blob getting in there and ruining it. So let's see, what's the best way for you guys to see this? So you need to make sure your smoke unit's clear. Let's see, I might have to zip tie this up a little bit more. Alright guys, so I did get it installed. Apologies, I did that off camera. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get these on, especially with all the wires we just put in there. It looks like it may be hanging up. I see this edge a little bit higher, and it feels like it's rocking back and forth. So it's actually in this, it's caught in a smoke funnel. There we go. Alright, it's in. But what I have noticed is, in doing these, I wouldn't be surprised if you have a gap in the where the body comes down over the frame on either side, because we did put a lot of wires in there for all these different lighting options. So that's the connectors kind of add to the bulk of taking up space under the shell. So if you wanted to directly hardwire to the shell, again, I don't know if I'd recommend that. You want to be able to service this if you have to, and still be able to take the shell off with as minimal effort as possible. So this looks pretty good. We're in. Take that off, and we'll get this mounted up. The holes look good. So again, one thing I like to look at is kind of lay it over gently on the back and kind of rock it around a little bit. Just make sure that it's latched in, in place all the way. It's down on the mounting post there, front and back. They look good, and that your trucks spin freely. They're not hanging up. If they're hanging off, it means you got a wire pinched inside. Because remember, we put the motor wires on both of them. We got our tachometer wires. Coupler wires are kind of run around the motors. So just some things you want to be aware of. But overall, I think this looks pretty good. It's sitting square. And hold it together and take a look at it. Looks pretty good. I got to put the rails on too. They just slide in, so it's not a big deal. We'll get those in before we tighten it up. So overall, it looks pretty good. So let's get the rails. We'll slide them under. We'll tighten it up, and we'll go throw it on the track. Okay, so we got the handrails here. Flip that back over, and they just go under the shell. So I'm going to lift it up a little bit. Actually, before I put that in, one thing I want to mention: when you are putting this all back together, you want to make sure that there are no wires pinched, along this rail and the shell on both sides. Again, this looks like it's sitting up a little bit high, but I think it's okay. It's just the side of the shell pushing out from the wire bulk in there. Again, I've seen it before in a lot of my installations, especially depending on the size of the shell. If you're dealing with a smaller locomotive, it's, you know, we put a lot of wires in there, so I would expect to see that. So, all right, let's get this in. Just drops in like that. All right, let's get it screwed together. Okay, I'm going to paint these handrails real quick. Just the edges of the, you know, where the steps are in the front and back. Alright guys, we've got the rails painted. I may have to touch them up a little bit later with the second coat, but overall I think they look pretty good. I got a broken chain on the back. I'll have to fix that too at some point. But just put a little splash of red on this cap here, fuel cap, both sides. Okay, so I got the rails painted. I got the cap done. That looks pretty sharp. All the newer ones seem to come with that, so that's why I started doing that when I do these upgrades. Right. So again, these rails I'll probably have to hit them again with another coat of paint. But I think overall we're ready to go put this on the tracks. Check it out. All right, guys. So we're nearing the end here. I think we're all buttoned up here. We got the rails painted, the fuel cap painted. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I forgot about. I think that is pretty much it. So, with that, we got two last things to do here. Number one, we're going to take this tape off. And the final thing we do here is don't forget to put your PS3 upgrade sticker on after all that hard work. Where you put this is totally up to you. My personal preference is down on the chassis. Oh, and I just dropped it. Let's try that again. Oh, I got thermal grease on that. Alright, let's try that again. I like to stick mine right down in here. You can put it wherever you want. Bottom of the fuel tank, by the speaker. But there you go. And then to give you some extras too, I usually put these on my boxes. So that way you know it's been upgraded and you got them on the shelf. But hopefully they're on the tracks, right? And running. So I'm going to put a little bit more smoke in this. And a couple more drops, and let's go take it for a spin on the track. Okay guys, here we go. We got it on the track, and let's do a start up. Alright, sounds good. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit here so I can talk over this. So we got the headlights, look good. Marker lights look pretty darn good, I think. Take you around back here. Alright, got the rear marker lights. We'll put it in reverse. There we go. Got the rear light on. Fire the rear coupler. And ratchet. There you go, rear coupler works. Back around front. Fire the front coupler. Front coupler works. And cab lights on. A little hard to see. But that's good. I don't see the LED from the windows, so happy with that. Just an overall look. So just camera back up. Turn on smoke unit. Now it's got a little bit of sound to it overall. I think that's comparable to my other smoke units. It is a lot quieter than it was before. So I'm pretty happy with that. Turn the volume up a little too. Alright, we got the rail fans out. Looks like they're ready to see this run. Hey guys, I'd like to thank you for following along with this series and taking this PS1 locomotive and upgrading to a PS3. Hopefully you found some of this either useful or entertaining. And as always, I thank you guys for watching the videos and your support. And until the next one, thumbs up.